My name's Ilya. This is Waypoint Web3. This is a safe space that I created together with Sanctor Capital and United Gamers to help um, kind of foster kind of an environment where people can come in and just talk about all things Web3 gaming. Education is kind of an important part of both onboarding users and kind of just learning as the tech grows. And so kind of wanted to kind of do my little part. You can, all of the spaces are recorded, as is this space, and so you can find previous or recording sessions online. They're currently posted out on YouTube. Everything from kind of our FPS discussions to the different blockchain gaming ecosystems are there. Today, we're going to be talking about community building, which is kind of a topic that's near and dear to the heart of everybody in Web3, I think, but is potentially especially important as we start talking about games. Before we get into all of that, I do have to say that nothing you hear is financial legal advice. All of the opinions are my own, and you may hear of companies and or assets that we've held, are holding, or may hold in the future. For the interest of full disclosure, I also want to say that we have back United Gamers, and I think that takes me through all of the official things that I do have to say. So now I'd love to kind of move on and introduce you to all of the speakers that are going to be sharing their thoughts with you today. I'll just kind of go across my screen. I'll call you up, and if you can say a few words about who you are, how you got into Web3 and gaming, and yeah, we'll get started. And first on my screen is Professor Pression.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Well, wow, Web3 is actually quite funny. I got into it back when actually Infinity was like kind of like blowing up. I wasn't in before then, but yeah, I got into it because my buddy, he told me about the whole NFT gaming side. I didn't believe him at first and listen, and then it eventually grew. And then that's when I got into it. And but before that, I was just doing crypto and stuff. Been gaming for about 30 years, so it's like yeah, like when it comes to gaming, it's like, heck yeah, I'll get into it. And that's why I like being the bridge between Web 2 and Web 3 with building the community. Pretty difficult still, even building a community in general with just regular gaming. But yeah, so I'm still in the Marines right now, soon to get out, doing cybersecurity. And yeah, I've just been all about the Web3 space and trying to get into these Web3 game companies and try to get them to like get more towards gamers because that's what a lot of them want to appeal for. So it's you got to get the actual gamers to get in there to help them make the game great. And PvP is the most important, PvE, and just getting the game to be fun first before the play to earn aspects come into it.
Awesome, thanks. Joe, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Can everyone hear me okay? I didn't test earlier.
A little bit quiet, but yeah.
Okay, well, I'll try and speak louder. Yeah, so thanks for having me. So my name is Joe. So I currently lead and the CEO of a company called Metasports. We got into Web3 gaming in 2020. So I have a history of being in content and particularly in professionally for production in esports through our companies way back. And someone introduced us to Axie in 2020 and asked if there was a future for like professional esports for the game. So we moved into the space to do that, went full Web3 rabbit hole, became quite obsessed, and we ended up forming Metasports as a new kind of like parent company because we really believed in like Web3 gaming values. And we're kind of like that's done since. And yeah, been on the rabbit hole ever since and working with multiple Web3 games and esports and content and still doing a lot of Web2 in between. So kind of like a 2.5, but really committed to the Web3 direction.
Awesome, thank you. Charles?
Hey guys, so yeah, my name's Charles Charles Lanson. I'm the CMO here at Forge and MetaPrints. Forge is a subsidiary of Animoca Brands, who you guys will know as a major Web3 gaming Goliath, and obviously we're privileged to be part of that. And my personal journey, based over here in the UK, worked in marketing for a number of big brands in the UK, and most recently KPMG. And very interested in the Web3 space, for a number of years, and sort of really dived in with NFTs, and then what was then Bondly, a company that I followed personally, and was very interested in what Bondly were looking to do with NFTs and how use NFTs in many different formats, but also obviously within gaming, and then through Metaprints, something we've been really expanding into is metaverse gaming. So developing metaverse experiences, most recently Monkeying Around, which launched on the Sandbox in the Alpha Season 3, based on Bored Apes franchise, and obviously something that we're looking to sort of continue, because that's been a huge success for us. So very much, I think part of the future of what we're doing here at Metaprint is going to be around how we further gamify the metaverse in ways that kind of make sense to a traditional gaming audience.
Awesome, thanks so much. And Pau?
Hey, hi everyone. My name is Paolo, and I'm leading partnerships at Planet Quest. How I got into Web3 gaming, very interestingly, I was actually in between, or rather, finishing my master's in divinity, if you could believe it, but I dabbled with NFTs. I also like Professor and Joe here. I also joined about the height of Axie Infinity. Got my own teams. And then I got involved in this other GameFi project, and I actually complained my way into helping the community. So I was uber passionate. They told me, "Why don't you just help out with the community?" And then I got so enamored by it, and after a while, I slightly got bored and wanted to tinker with other things. And so within that gaming space, I then helped with content, charting out content, business development, fundraising, and yeah, I met so many organizations and VCs and launchpads and all that, and now it's really helped, in terms of my role in bridging people and partnerships. So yeah, that's the journey so far, and I love it.
Awesome, thank you. And like I said, my name is Oya. I'm one of the co-founders at Sanctor Capital, and we back early stage teams in the Web3 space focused on metaverse and gaming. So I want this to be kind of a free flow discussion. So I'll kind of throw out a topic or a question, and anybody, no particular order, you can kind of jump in and share your thoughts, and hopefully we'll get a nice flow going. So to start, let's start with the basics, right? So we're talking about community building for Web3 games. Why is community so important to Web3 gaming? We've all talked about community in the center in the grander context of Web3, but for gaming, does it have a special meaning? And is community for Web2 games different than community for Web3 games?
Okay, I can take a stab at this. Sorry, can anyone hear me? I'm just like,
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yep, here.
Cool. So I'll take a stab at it. I think the perspective I want to give is because we come from doing content and campaigns and kind of like Web2, esports and creators. And so when I think if I remember the question clearly, right, it's about why are communities important for games in Web3 and what might it be different for Web2 and Web3, at least for us in our experience now working and still working between both. I think what's been very, very fascinating, or why communities are important, is for Web2, a lot of like the communities have primarily been audiences, right? Like audiences of the game and players itself. Like the communities are become less part of the, I guess, the core knowing of the game. It's more been micro communities of players, and then audiences are kind of like where the business is at. I think for us, and again, this might not be the same experience for everyone, but what we saw in Web3 moving in was that adding communities that are also either part of governance or able to own player assets provided a kind of like a very, maybe a split or some changes in terms of the profile of what would have been maybe audiences and very passionate people on Reddit, now you had a different level of passion because there was ownership involved. And for us who do content and trying to work with games or with protocols or sponsors, it's created a kind of a very different approach to what an audience of a player base, viewership, and engagement with communities are like. So that's the thing for us, and this is what we do professionally, is the kind of a core difference. And at least in terms of why it's important, I think a lot of the importance of communities are this elevated sense of ownership and caring about the direction of the game. I think adds something different in Web3 and for gaming. So I really believe that player asset ownership can contribute, and for the ones that figure out governance, can contribute to a longer lasting life cycle, I think, for games over time. So a little long-winded answer, but those are things that we've been very passionate about trying to solve or work with in the difference and why communities matter.
I think that Web2 gamers and Web3 gamers are actually one of the same, because each of us, we play different games both in Web2 and Web3. So I don't think this is always necessarily a dichotomy, but the difference here is maybe sometimes we put on different hats, because sorry for my voice, this is the post-COVID voice. We put on different hats, right? For example, because in Web3 we also don the hats of investors or consumers with a lot more capital dug in, remembering the days of Axie Infinity and all that, and in the time that required, to really grind. And as opposed to Web2 games, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, games would be about $100 tops. And I think the other things here is that what I do like about Web3 gaming is that you are actually more involved in the development process, and the devs are actually within reach. And this is not as common of a thing, where you have direct access to the devs in Discord. You get direct access to, through the power of voting in the DAOs and all these things. And so I think it's a bit of an upgrade, but at the same time, the profiles are the same. And the best part about it is we all share the same thing, which is that we're gamers, to the core. Yeah.
Yeah, and like for the whole community, like I totally agree with what's being said. And like you're gonna need a community to help build the game and get the pretty much word of mouth out there. When it becomes a thing with casual gamers, competitive gamers, content creators, you're gonna need them to also talk about the game, and it's not just bias of just like the game company talking about the game. It's everyone putting their 2 pieces and 2 cents into the game to make the game better. Hopefully, the game companies do listen to that feedback, because that's literally people who have invested, even the play to earn people as well too. I mean, some of them can vary from competitive to casual, but you're gonna need to hear their opinions, because that's gonna make the game better and make it replayable constantly. But if you don't listen to that, then it's like, all right, then the community is gonna shortly die off. Like the whole investor side, you don't just need investors to help direction of the game. You're going to need everyone's involvement, especially the ones who are playing the game all the time. So you build a community from there and actually be caring about their content that they're creating. Even if there are small numbers on social media and things like that, they know people. And the more people that they know and they bring on board, the more, you can build from that. And yeah, that's why communities make games. So it's Web2, Web3, that's still similar. It's just Web3. It's just like still developing, and you just got to listen to people more and get out there.
Yeah, and you know what? Just to build on that, it's interesting what you were saying there, Pao, about that we are all Web2 and Web3 gamers, and we will wear both hats, and I completely agree with that. And I think that one of the things that I think often happens is when we talk about Web3 gaming is we focus on the available kind of Web3, let's call them technologies and tools, like NFT ownership, and how that ownership can lead to things like governance and obviously transferable assets and interoperability between games and the kind of vision of Web3 gaming. And we focus on that, and rightly so, because I think there is huge growth in that kind of space. But when it comes to communities, ultimately, what do Web3 communities expect from a game? They expect to be not just a part of the decision-making process for the game, but I think in kind of idealistic terms, they want to be the game. And maybe that's being a bit too dramatic, but ultimately, is that such a far-fetched thing? That actually, audiences don't just feel like they have a sense of ownership in the game, but they actually they share in the mission of the game. They share in the development of the game in many ways, and they share in kind of promoting that game. It feels part of them, and they obviously get incentivized for being part of that creative process. So it's no longer that kind of game developer versus audience kind of relationship. It's very much that the lines are blurred between the two, and we talk here at Forge about the blurring of the line between creator and fan. And I don't think it's that different if you think about gamer and developer. Equally, Web3 audiences, when we talk about the importance of community, is actually without a Web3 community, you don't have a Web3 game. And without the ability to sustain a kind of a commercial model, let's call it a ecosystem that benefits everybody. Again, you're not going to survive as a Web3 game. That's ultimately what it's all about. Is the incentives have to be there, whether it's financial incentives or if it's community-based incentives in terms of, forging relationships, or if it's obviously, game-related incentives, so you get the experience. These incentives all have to be running in parallel and aligned in such a way that there's continuous value being extracted from the ecosystem by game developers and gaming audiences.
I want to piggyback off of that. I think throughout this conversation, I've heard, Web 2, community is basically the audience. And then Web 3, you have gamers, you have investors, you have developers, you have governors. There's all sorts of profiles within the Web 3 community. So I'm curious, how do you bring everybody together, and how do you, Charles, you say, how do you align incentives such that everybody remains happy?
Well, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be rich. No, so it's ultimately, this is where the balance lies, because you need to have the right level of should we call it authority given to the Web3 community. So how much power do they actually have? I mean, we've seen numerous examples. I won't go into too many details because I don't want to talk negatively about other projects or whatever it might be. But there's examples of situations where a game has incentivized an audience too much, and then the incentive becomes too heavily weighted around monetary value extraction, and then it obviously is at the detriment of the game itself. We talk about the play to earn versus the play and earn movement, and the importance of trying to move away from this idea of play to earn, because it perhaps suggests that there's it's all about a monetary transaction between game and gamer, versus this idea of why shouldn't you be rewarded for your participation in a game if you've reached a certain level, if your character's been upgraded a certain amount, why can't you benefit from that in some way, whether that's in additional incentives or whether you can sell your XP on via an NFT on a marketplace, whatever it might be. But those incentives have to align. So there is no fine answer to it. What I would say is your token, if you try and play too much with the tokenomics of a project, and you're basing your token around an assumed value, and that value is driven by your community, you have to consider, if you're not feeding into that value in the community. And I suppose what I mean by this, I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear, but if you launch a token and say, right, our token supply is X, we anticipate this many gamers, we anticipate this kind of use case for the token, it will power our in-game marketplace, and it will power our reward structure, for those who play, and everything else. And you do all the math, and it seems like it's going to be a value driver. You have to consider that the rug can literally be pulled out if your community isn't engaged with the game itself. If there's no value in the playing of the game, people don't just play to earn money. That's not what it's about. They've got better ways to make money, with their time. You've got Move to earn for a start. They could be going for a run and earning more money. So ultimately, you have to consider about this value trade and thinking beyond just the value trade of token, or other Web3 products, and start thinking about the value trade in terms of, the ownership of the game versus the governance, the opportunity to make friends and interact and join clans or whatever it might be alongside the actual gameplay. Like, is it gameplay that's valuable? Does it make use of people's time? Is it seen, therefore, as, is the monetary incentive, is that just and it should be essentially the icing on top of the cake. It shouldn't be the be all and end all of that value proposition.
Yes, and definitely, like, whew, the amount of arguments I had in my Web2 Discord about just trying to get them into the Web3 gaming space, like, I always take, I'm always getting roasted, but I have like some things to back up. But a lot of the things and like bridging the gap between the two, it's a lot of the games aren't making it simple to get into the game. Like me being the bridge, I have to buy the NFTs and then make wallets and or tell them how to make a wallet, and then they don't want to do it because it's too complicated and they don't know about it, and their attention span gets lost. A lot of the Web3 side, they make it complicated to even get into the game with the NFTs. And the issue a lot that Web2 are having is you have to buy the NFT and wait for a long period of time to actually play the game. That also throws people off. So if companies can like make the game and have gameplay first where you can invite your friends and actually play against people and not like PvE type stuff, that would be an incentives already, just getting people into the game, because Web2 gamers are used to buying a game and playing a beta or alpha, getting access to that, or just playing a game, buying it, and just being able to play it. Web3, it's getting better, but they still make it like kind of like real difficult to do it. And if you make it just simple to get into the game, test it out, even if it's like game trial times, like for accounts, linking it with Gmail or something like that, that would be excellent. Where I don't have to buy the NFT, and things like that. Like you don't have to have a high influence amount to be able to play the game. If you know a lot of people that want to try the game out, it should be something as simple as that. Like, hey, you're a content creator, yeah, we'll definitely give you some game codes to test out with your buddies, because we're trying to bring more gamers into the game, and it's not just to play to earners. And a lot of Web3 make the whole earning portion real complicated, so that also throws people off. It's like rocket science. Some of them make it. It's like, no, you got to make it simple. Like I know EVIO, they made it real simple to earn. Things like that. Just keeping things simple, making it easy accessible. Because like I said, with the whole Web2 side, they just want to get in and play and invite friends and test games out.
There's something interesting there that I wanted to kind of zone in on. With Web3 games, the community starts kind of operating and engaging a lot of times quite a long time before an actual playable is available. And so how do you see this dynamic, and how do you kind of keep the community engaged if, this is a gaming community and the game could be, 6 months, 12 months out in terms of, first playable?
Oh, that's easy. Even if like alpha, even if there's something before an alpha, just giving samples of the game to people to have like something tangible instead of just holding and waiting and building off the hype. Give people sample to test out a little area in the game, see what they think about it, get feedback from that, because we like to be game testers, and that's what I like about Web3. We're like so into like with the whole development phase and everything, unlike Web2. And that's what I like. It's like, just give samples. Like, I don't care if the game is like not really that playable, but if I can get a sample of it and test it out and give feedback to make the game better, so when the new sample comes out and that's a little bit more and the issues have been fixed, it's like, wow, my opinion actually made sense, and wow, and they're actually listening to me, and I want to bring more people onto this game because now I want to make the game better. Like things like that. Like that's all that's needed. Like the whole building on hype and not giving anything, that's, like I said, one of the gripes of the Web2 side is like they seem like they see it's like a cash grab, and they just buy and then waiting for long periods of time. It's like, give samples. Like that's all it takes.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I feel like, sorry, pal. Yeah, mind if I go ahead real quick? I'll keep this short. But I tend to agree. I think like there was a lot of euphoria obviously last year, but exactly like Professor was saying, I tend to agree that I was going to say something to the lines of be honest about the development cycles. And I think, I think what Professor was saying about giving samples over time is an excellent way to do that. And I think it's a lot easier if you didn't do something that had to do with selling assets first, because I think, again, it sets maybe a difficult impression. So I think being honest about development cycles is amazing. And being able to, I think, establish the developers, I feel now, after we've learned everything from the past year or so, with the honesty, should also establish a certain sense of, like, draw certain lines or establish a certain sense of authority, depending on how much they're willing to, how much leeway of the communities in feedback are they willing to kind of like go with. I think there's nothing wrong, to be honest, with being a stern captain as a developer, but in still involving your crew and the community to give you feedback that you can take, and still being able to keep them healthy even if you don't agree with everything. So I think being honest about those development cycles and giving it in pieces where possible would be a much, like Professor said, it's really, I agree, it's very easy. It's just that I think the euphoria of last year kind of ran away with a lot of what was happening. But Pao, please, I'd love to hear what you think also, Pao.
No, sorry, I totally agree. What I really like about what we're discussing is that we all agree that, like what Charles said, what the professor said, what you said, also Joe said, we're all builders here, right? And we're part of the decision making in the games that we're involved in, and there's something really powerful. And I think to answer this question is that long phase of development and keeping people's attention is very difficult to hold, especially with a TikTok generation. But the beauty of communal experience and having shared experiences is that people actually, I mean, I'm not sure if this is a little bit cheesy, but there are multifaceted ways, right? One is they develop connections with each other, and this is why in different projects you have enclaves of different language groups, right? Enclaves of, even in guilds they have different games that they partner with, that people naturally start to form bonds with each other. And then once they have those shared experiences, they then band together and try to voice out their opinions on how the messaging should be, on how what the alpha is like for them, what the drip feed of new features are like. And this is something that we carried over in the culture of profile picture NFTs, right? Because people bonded so much together with their apes and with their birds and with everything else, with dogs and cats and whatnot. And that shared experience is something that we carried over, right? And it just makes people um, naturally bonded, so much so that sometimes the developer doesn't even need to step in to give like superficial contests of sorts and events, because the community themselves, once they're given the tools, once they're given the roles, once they're given the structure, they just carry the community forward. I think that's a wonderful thing, yeah, in keeping the attention, yeah, as well.
So it sounds like agency is kind of one of the more critical components of community building in Web3, right? People want to believe that they have the ability to influence outcomes. I think that, with NFTs, kind of, the easiest way that I hear people kind of explain NFTs to kind of a more traditional audience is, the concept of ownership, right? The concept of agency. And I guess that it does skip over a lot of the actual tech, but it kind of translates to the community rather well. And it sounds like where it comes to actual community building, that concept needs to come through in order to kind of catalyze the people's activity. How do you kind of coincide that? How do you reconcile this with the amount of bots that we saw on Twitter for a lot of the gaming communities? I think right now bots are being cleared out of Twitter, and we're seeing community numbers going way down. How do you reconcile that, and why do you think people do that, and what will be the reaction now that we're seeing a little bit of a clearing?
That's tough, right? I think initially, some projects may, or I know some projects, some of them intentionally put in bots. Some allowed it, like close one eye, and some are just maybe are inept in combating bots, right? But I think uh, how I would hold that tension is that eventually, because agency is important, because people want to feel and know that their voices matter and that they can enact change. Eventually, this does have its success stories. For example, communities then get to clamor for their Discord communities to be purged of bots, right? And this we've seen in many servers actually that they've done, and I think and you could easily see in the engagement anyway, right? What's my ratio? Like 100 reacts would be like, I don't know, 3,000 members in the community around there. And if not, then it's most likely a very unengaged or not as real community. I know that excuse me, that's probably a little bit harsh, but I think eventually it'll win out anyway, because a true community that values the project, that values agency, I think they will see through, and they will actually uh, make an exchange, yeah, for the better. Anti-bots.
Yeah, and I guess just to build on that as well, I think this lends itself to what I was saying around incentivization. I mean, what drives people to want to use bots? A genuine example. This happened just yesterday. I came in to work Monday and realized that our subscription email subscribers for a project we're working on called Cryptosaurs with the makers of Tron. We had 32,000 new subscribers over the weekend, which is a lot, by the way. Like, without going into detail, that many times multiplied our kind of current subscriber base. And it was all bots. Obviously, they'd managed to find a way around our bot prevention, and obviously they're looking to get some free stuff. And I think that's ultimately when we're talking about the kind of the ecosystem and the need to make sure that value is dispersed in a way that is healthy. What drives bots is the opportunity for financial gain, right? The person behind those bots knows that if they have 20,000 different accounts, each of which receives a free NFT that's worth, even if it's $15, well, that's $15 times 20,000. That's not bad. So it's about making sure that you are, I suppose, the way that you offer value to the community, the way that that people earn items, the way that they interact and extract value from that ecosystem, whether it's through tokens or through NFTs or through ranking or kind of community roles, whatever it might be. These things are done based on merit and not just kind of free giveaways or kind of it's not all about actions that essentially a bot can perform. So I think that's where we have to get into this mindset. I think people are expecting Web3 projects and Web3 games to have a very simple mechanic to earn and to extract value from the ecosystem, and it's really about kind of, I suppose, integrating that in not necessarily a complex way, but certainly in a more sustainable way into the gameplay, into the game. So you really have to take part in the game. You really have to do things that only a human can do to be able to then get the value out of it. And I think there's more and more examples of that now. I think, and I think that's going to be the future of the space. It can't be, it can't be giveaways or airdrops or that's just not going to work anymore.
Yeah, because what I've been noticing, because I kind of came in late and I've been listening to the bots and like that. I've seen. I think I heard about that in Axie when it was still going, and like people, I guess somehow were just having bot teams and all that. I don't know how that even happened, but it's funny because some of the players of the play to earn side, some of them act real body as well too, in regards to that, because a lot of them. That's why you need to have checks and balances between players, casual, competitive, and the play to earners. Because if you had too many play to earners, they're not going to really give feedback to make the game get better. And the whole thing is just, how do I make money, and that's it, and make it to where they're trying to just like make these bots just so they can extract and not really care much about the game. It's I've seen it and I've been hearing about it, and it's like, oh,
Yeah, I think everyone pretty much hit the nail on the head. Especially like what Charles said, particularly about incentivization. And I guess coming from my end and my team, I think that the bot issue was really incentivized by it. I'll say that I like to think that when we approach gaming, or as all of us who are gamers, right? The one thing we know about gaming audiences or gaming players is that if you can break something in a game, they will find a way to break it, right? And if you add money on that layer, then, then it really becomes the wrong incentive if that's the primary incentive, right? Um, but I think it's good. I think what we've seen with a lot less of the bots on Twitter without the financial incentive is a lot better representation uh, of where the stage of the communities of these games are, right? A litmus test for my team, like when we do Web2 gaming content or esports, is that the litmus test we always check are things like, are there community groups on multiple social media networks or community networks that are popping up organically? Like, is there a Facebook community group that's public being championed in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and the Philippines? Are people starting to post, are specific content creators now talking about their friends talking about it? And I think clearly for many Web2 games, it's not yet there. And I think that is, for us, these are really great litmus tests to know that bots aren't, gaming the system when we're going to invest time and effort into a particular gaming ecosystem. So I think it's good. I think it's not the sexiest at the moment because the player audiences are becoming more natural for the early development stage of the games. But it's definitely a lot better than the impression of bots and what was happening. I think with some of the euphoria some time ago. So I think everyone hit the nail on the head, and I like that.
yeah, because you want to have authentic people. Authentic people wins in long term because people will see body stuff and veer them away. Yeah, you have a high number of people, followers and stuff on social media and Discord, but it's like if you have people like saying just good morning and not actually conversations, it's like, wait a minute. Is this real people here? Is this real like community, or is this bots or like fake community and euphoria and stuff? You don't want that.
You're about to cause an existential crisis because I think if you go on crypto Twitter, half of the conversations are a good morning, and then 100 replies of good morning back to people.
Yes, I've been seeing that. It's like, wait.
Are there any real people around?
Let's not forget good night.
Yeah. It's important.
I love the Greg one where it's good morning except for everyone. It's night 4. But I think it's a good point, right? I think that the meme though, the meme kind of always wins, and that I think the GM is a good example of a meme. Like if you can create cultural memes within a gaming community, even if it's a small one, that I think is always powerful. And I think that's something that we haven't seen yet isolated in specific ecosystem of games, but that would be a powerful thing for like community buy-in. When people start creating their own memes within the culture of the game, or the community rather.
There's something I want to touch before kind of the end of the hour. We talked about kind of engaging the community and, for the old games, the concept of the story, the lore of the game was incredibly important. And, especially if we're talking about franchises where kind of things evolve over time, that story was a big deal. It feels like in Web3 games right now, the lore is a little bit of an afterthought. Is that how it feels to you? And do you see that as a problem? And, what do you see as a solution?
I'm going to jump in straight into this one. Sorry, everybody, but yes, I think that lore is a big problem. I mean, the lack of lore, I think, in creating buy-in from Web3 games right now is a huge lack. I think that a lot of the games that have been built so far, in my opinion, right, come from a very utopian view that the user base, because they own assets as well in the game, are going to be amazing people at creating the lore and like UGC, right, the user-generated content, and build that immediately. But I think many people gamers are not built to be part of the story yet. But the tech and the development of assets has left a lot of studios feeling like that is somewhat a floating responsibility. And I, as a gamer, I would love for so many more of these games that I had like a deep storyline or characters that I could buy into. They don't have to be an NFT, but if you can build a hero or stories that we see all the time in Web2 created, to that lock people in, or generations that eventually start proving generational care for the game ecosystem or the world. I think a lot more of these Web3 games would maybe, like Charles said, like you incentivize maybe the right initial community members to want to follow that story and eventually contribute to that story. So I absolutely think there could be better storytelling. Half of the, I feel like my joke in Web3 is that there's a lack of, sometimes there's not a lot of, there doesn't seem to be a priority in hiring like creative directors. Sometimes in the story side, I don't understand, right? It's more of like the asset, but the story I feel like is a gift. Like some of the best IPs I follow in Web2 are because of the writers who created the world. So yes, I feel very passionately about it, but I really think it will be a huge unlock when the stories come out and through buy-in. The buy-ins come out through stories and lore in Web3 games.
Yes, I'm definitely going to agree with this one, because it's like all that energy and all the energy put in marketing and the NFTs and just selling. How about you put all that energy into creating lore, creating. I'm going to speak with the story side. Creating lore, getting like the ones who make stories, making multiple stories, and even a golden egg is you already have these stories that you took the time in doing it. Once you have a good community, now it's like, all right, community, we're going to start the base game like this, and we have multiple options of way the lore can happen. If you guys want to vote on it, and this is a way to get that engagement, to get people like what's in it for me kind of thing. It's like, whoa, I can actually make a direction for a game and vote in regards to how the game is going to start and the lore for the characters and things like that. It's like, wait a minute, I never had this ever in my life with any of these games that are the Web2 games right now. It's like doing things like that to where you're appealing more to the gamers, and it's not looking like you're just doing it for a cash grab and just like an empty shell. Like if you do things like that, you're going to nail the game being lasting a long time, because you already started with immediately a story for a game and things like that and building up. And it's like, whoa, this is a lot different than just, buy this NFT. All right, now I'm going to wait for a long time and we don't know what's going on. And what is going on? Nothing yet. We're still waiting. It's like, okay. Take the time and just make a good story. Even books or something, like comics, like do something like that. Like, just start somewhere.
Actually, I'm fortunate to be in a project that actually does that. But I think the lack does that, as in, like having actual lore and community voting on it. Every single week, it gives the community a reason to come back. So if that's there, right, number one, this really enforces how the question earlier of how do we keep our communities engaged during long development cycles. The answer to that is to the community, and this value could be monetary, financial, through copium of how the actors would appreciate. It could be like what you said as well earlier, Professor, about having in progress of the game, and that's value because the community wants it. And the other thing that is more, right, we give people intellectual properties to admire and be a part of, and that's powerful, right? Because never before, or it doesn't happen very often, right, that you actually become part of the writing team, an extension of the writing team as part of the community. Okay, as good as those are, I think why we're games intentionally skipping it is, I don't know, I think it just wasn't the project. Like a writer would, that's probably here. A writer would like post what at least 1,000 USD a month. That's 60K a year. For some lead team, that's an extra dev. That's an extra marketing guru growth extraordinary or whatnot. And I really think that it just really boils down to that. I'd like to give them credit. I don't think projects are lazy. Maybe I think it really just boils down to the budget. But I mean, there's always works always, right? I mean, Guild War, for example. Now, for example, all communities make their own lore, right? And that's when they're invested enough. They do craft their own. That can always happen, but again, it boils down to the community on how they want to carry it forward. It cannot always be a developer thing, but it's always wonderful. Taken on by the community.
I think we're coming up to the top of the hour, and so kind of I always like to end these talks by asking speakers about kind of one thing that they're excited about in the coming months about our given topic. So yeah, if we can go around and everybody can say one thing they're excited about in terms of kind of community building in Web3, that'd be great. Professor, if you want to go first, you're up on my screen. You can go.
What I'm looking forward to, I guess, Web3. The upcoming Metalcore Alpha. Hopefully Cypher as well too, and just more of the Web3 side, making it available for content creators, no matter what size, to be able to just play the game more and make content from it. Because the more people that are able to get access, they feel like they're more valued. Just because they have low numbers doesn't mean that they don't know people. So it's being able to play more Web3 games and getting into helping and even talking with developers and stuff, being at Comic-Con and everything. It was excellent, to talk with everyone, and it was a good feeling. I just want to be able to do that more in the whole space.
Always great to hear nice words about Metalcore. Sanctor is one of the backers for Metalcore, so I'm always super excited to hear, when one of our games people are excited for one of our games. Joe?
I think for me, it's based on I think a lot of the studios, a lot of the ones who raised capital last year have their dev cycle alpha, early alpha, pre-alpha coming out over this quarter, I believe, or the first half of next year. I'm honestly just excited to see what's being built. I think every time someone releases something, it raises the bar. At least what I think that most are working towards. And we're seeing a lot more genres for the first time having Web3 integration that have not been done, like the new Strikers format, like MOBA, football. That's something coming out I know soon. That's already in Web2. So yeah, I'm pretty much excited for the actual games. I think everyone who's building around games will also get better as the games come out. So that's really what I'm most excited for.
Awesome. Charles?
Yeah, I mean, I've been, to be honest with you, I've been amazed at just how successful the Alpha Season 3 has been for the Sandbox. So, I thought I'm really looking forward to basically seeing how kind of the metaverse gaming space grows. Obviously, that's an area that we're particularly involved in. But a lot of people talking about the metaverse being, it's not there yet, and we're not just early, we're far too early, and it's never going to take off. And I guess I'm amazed at we had a daily active users of about 30,000 people playing the Sandbox, which is not bad when you think about the steps involved in getting into this world. We talked earlier about the issues around adoption, using wallets, actually entering into space. You have to download a piece of software to get in. That's great, and I can't wait to see sort of further growth in this space, even during a bear market.
And Paulo?
Yeah, so for me, it's I really like how the lines between Web2 and Web3 are getting more blurry, or it's getting harder to distinguish them, right? So I'm so excited about the launch of different launchers, right? In games, we have Ultra, we have Elixir, right? Making this team of it's actually becoming Steam Web2. I'm excited about traditional publishers coming on board, right? Like Square Enix, Sega, Consoles, coming over, making their own blockchains. So I'm thrilled about that, right? Because that means that the gamer persona, like you like talked about earlier, it really becoming just a single person and no longer dichotomized, and really boils down to good quality product, not economics, not really just good solid games and good solid infrastructures. And I'm excited about that. Yeah.
Awesome. And that kind of takes us to the top of the hour. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Speakers, thank you so much for joining and sharing your thoughts. And